Tonight, it's time to quit or get off the pot. The Los Angeles Times, California's biggest paper today, has joined the chorus calling for Gary Condit to resign or at least announce that he's not running for re-election. While the Washington police chief goes on TV to say that anyone who's watched Condit's ill-fated and less than frank television interviews a week ago now has a solid idea of how slippery his 4 police interrogations were. The chief adds that he's leaving open the possibility of a 5th close encounter with the congressman. We'll have the latest on the search for Chandra Levy and the unraveling of her former lover's political career. Also, the murdering dog was hiding under a table in his mommy's backyard. And so the nationwide manhunt for Nikolay Soltys, the vicious killer suspected in 6 brutal murders, including those of his pregnant wife and 3-year-old son, ends with a whimper. We'll have the latest. And on the 4th anniversary of the death of Princess Diana, the father of her boyfriend Dodi, who also died in the crash, as you know, presents evidence of what Mohammed Al-Fayed believes was a conspiracy to murder the couple. Tonight you'll see the documents that do raise some disturbing questions. All that plus a preview of my red-hot Dateline NBC special, Inside the Drug War, right now on Rivera Live.
From CNBC, this is Rivera Live. Here is Geraldo Rivera.
We said all the time we didn't think he was forthcoming in all those interviews. I think that if you watched the interview last week, you got a pretty good flavor for what I'm talking about, and he answered all the questions. But you decide whether or not you think that was helpful or not. So we're asking questions. The questions we think are the right questions. We've got answers. We don't consider him a suspect because right now we don't have a crime. We've got a lot of people that we've talked to, but it's up for people to decide whether or not the information has been really forthcoming.
He still won't call him a suspect because he still won't call Chandra Levy's disappearance a crime, but it is obvious today that D.C. Police Chief Charles Ramsey was, for the first time, letting us all know that Gary Condit was as uncooperative with authorities as he was with Connie Chung. While the chief keeps the pressure high on the legal front, today's Washington Post reports that, quote, California Democrats have begun abandoning Representative Gary Condit in word and deed, further damaging the political fortunes of a congressman who until recently was thought unbeatable in his conservative district. And in an editorial calling for him to resign or at the very least announce he is not running for re-election, the Los Angeles Times concludes, quote, we may never know what happened to Levy, but we do know that Condit's flim-flam did nothing to help. Condit thought his evasions would protect his career. Instead, they destroyed it. Hi, everybody. I'm Geraldo Rivera. It is probably too late for Gary Condit to salvage his crumbling career, but maybe it's not too late to squeeze more information out of him about Chandra Levy, missing now these 4 months. Before we hear what our stellar panel has to say, let's go to NBC's Nora O'Donnell in Washington for the latest. Nora, the impact of the LA Times editorial would seem to me to be profound in a state where it seems to dominate the political dialogue.
The Los Angeles Times is, of course, the state's largest newspaper. They calling for Congressman Gary Condit to resign today. The Los Angeles Times marks the 4th newspaper to call for Congressman Condit's resignation. Of course, there were 3 local newspapers in Condit's hometown district, which called several weeks ago for him to resign. Now the state's largest newspaper also in a harsh editorial today saying Condit should step down, not run for re-election. It adds to what is this crumbling of political support in the home state of California. Of course, this week we heard from one of Congressman Condit's closest political allies, Governor Gray Davis, who said he was disheartened that Condit had not spoken out sooner about Chandra Levy and about what he knew with that. Also now we're hearing that California Democrats may help end Congressman Condit's political career by the stroke of a pen. And that's because by the end of tomorrow, we're expected to get redistricting maps. Now, reapportionment is done every 10 years based on the census, so this is already just going to happen anyway. But California Democrats, which control the legislature, are expected to release a map that dramatically changes his district. And what they'll do is they'll move it a little bit north to include more Democrats, adding some African Americans, some Black Americans, Latino Americans into his district. The idea being that it's going to become a much more Democratic district so that if Condit resigns, another Democrat could win there. Or if Condit doesn't resign and the party thinks somebody else should run, that another Democrat may have a shot at beating Condit in a reconfigured district. Geraldo?
So what about his support back home? What do you hear about that? Before I get to this message that Chief Ramsey evidently was sending, what about the, let's wrap up the political support back home.
Well, this week it was all bad news. There was a local poll that showed only about 27% of those in the district would vote for him again. That's not enough to win a re-election, even though he has been a political figure in that district for some 30 years now. And again, I think the news that will probably be the most damaging, other than the editorials, is what comes out by his friends and his colleagues. Remember, he used to be in the state assembly. He knows many of these people. And of course, Gray Davis is the governor and ultimately in charge of signing these redistricting maps. What will change when these reapportionment maps, and how much more difficult will it make it for Condit to run? And we should know that by the end of tomorrow. But this newly configured district is going to add doubly to Condit's problems.
Am I crazy in thinking that maybe Chad Condit will take his dad's job?
You know, I think that's interesting that you point that out, and I had thought and had been asking sources about whether that was a possibility, and certainly he spoke very clearly and perhaps politically forcefully about his father on Larry King Live, but he ruled out in that interview that he ever wanted to be involved in public or political service. He had said he had been mentioned to somebody that would run for the assembly out there this year, but now he says he no longer wants to run. So that being said, there are a whole host of other Democrats whose names are popping up as people who could run against Condit, names that, of course, Democrats are floating out there.
Okay, now let's get to D.C., closer to home. What do you think Chief Ramsey was saying? I mean, that was pretty harsh in his own gentle way to point out, now you know how slippery this character is, what our 4 interviews were like. If we didn't ask specifically, not just did you have sexual relations, you had to say what it was, et cetera. You know, you get the idea. What was the message that the chief was trying to send?
Well, in the larger picture, it's one more person who has come forward to say that what Congressman Condit said in his interview with Connie Chung is just not true. Chief Ramsey said today that, in fact, they have said all along that Condit was not forthcoming in his interviews. That is directly different from what Condit has told the public in his interview. He says he was forthcoming. Police chief says not true. He wasn't forthcoming. Also, the police chief leaving open the possibility of a 5th interview with Congressman Condit. As referring to the case of the Chandra Levy, though, Chief Ramsey said they have no concrete leads. They still don't consider Condit a suspect, and that they hope that Chandra Levy is still alive. They've still got their 2 detectives working the case, but nothing new yet, just going back over and interviewing people. Geraldo?
NBC's Nora O'Donnell, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So you want to fight?
Some other day.
roll tape in. Here's from yesterday, Jim Robinson, the attorney for Anne Marie Smith, sitting in Joe Tacopina's seat. Roll.
Abby Lowell called me in late June and said that the 2 of them were talking, and he was concerned about privilege not applying and that we should stop this. And I said, I don't know what's going on. So I called Anne Marie and said, what's going on? And she said, he's calling me. This is after I've rejected the affidavit. She says, he's calling me to try to get me to sign the affidavit, as is, not with any changes or anything. And this is like 2 weeks after the 15th, when I rejected the whole idea. He's suborning perjury. He's physically in the state of California. She's physically in the state of California. Let's get this in front of a grand jury.
Why are you so down or disdainful of Robinson's admittedly extraordinary attempt to use the kind of archaic law in California that allows a private citizen to initiate a grand jury act?
Because I expect and hope most lawyers, you know, would not treat the judicial system as a tool to manufacture a publicity stunt. Geraldo, what was done there? Look, if his client has a gripe against Gary Condit, and he may well, there's a civil arena for that. The prosecutorial, the criminal justice system is not to be governed by lay people or civilians. It's to be governed by an elected official, a prosecutor, who exercises what they call prosecutorial discretion, which is the most important tool a prosecutor has in his toolbox. To now have an individual lawyer, okay, file a criminal complaint, although on the books technically, there's a reason it's never used. We can't have citizens deciding who's going to be charged with crimes. And imagine the criminal justice system if we now let every citizen go there and file grand jury complaints against a spouse, a disgruntled boyfriend. I mean, that's not what it's for.
I understand.
And just because this is the Gary Condit case and it's national TV and they got 15 minutes out of this thing, you know, they should not do that. And there's a good reason that the prosecutor is not too thrilled with this type of conduct. This is a lawyer who should know better.
But here's why I think it was a brilliant move. I mean, with all due respect to you. Now the two words grand jury are out there. One of the things I have always, you know, pondered and fretted about in this case is that it hasn't gone to a grand jury yet. Even if you don't have an identifiable suspect, you can bring a case to a grand jury. I mean, it's done all the time. It is an evidence-gathering mechanism, tried and true, and at least Jim Robinson, at least Anne Marie Smith had the guts to bring it, attempt to bring it to some grand jury where it should be, rather than being knocked around where a chief of police won't even admit a crime has been committed.
Yes, I agree that this case, I agree. I was a former prosecutor. I would absolutely have employed a grand jury in this case because you do get people in there, you get them under oath, you can't subpoena documents, you can't subpoena other things. It still doesn't, in my opinion, excuse a lawyer from using or attempting to use, because he knows full well the DA is not going to pick this up and present it to a grand jury or not. There's no grand jury going to convene over this complaint. It's just not going to happen. And if he knows it's not going to happen, the way to get this done, I've heard him make comments that the DA is in bed, so to speak, politically with Condit. Well, that's not a reason to go above the DA.
Have a lot of company.
Just, all right, yeah.
All right.
Terry Lenzner, tell me about my ex-boss, Terry Lenzner. Tell me about what your feelings are vis-a-vis a grand jury.
Well, I've been saying for 2 months, Geraldo, that there ought to be a grand jury convened in the District of Columbia to examine this whole issue, not just whether the congressman was involved, but all the issues, and that it ought to be centralized in a an experienced prosecutor who can review all the information, use the grand jurors to bounce off theories, motives, and use the power to bring the congressman and other people under oath and have them, and his staff and his wife perhaps, and decide whether or not they're going to testify truthfully or suffer the potential punishment of perjury.
Oh, what happens here, Terry? You're him for a second. I'm presenting the case to the grand jury. He volunteers to appear. Did you have a relationship with Anne Marie Smith or didn't you? What's his answer going to be?
Well, that would be the first question I would ask to determine whether he's credible or not, if I had hard evidence that he did have such a relationship.
What would you answer? What if you're Gary Condit? What do you answer?
Well, that's his issue. I mean, he's got to decide whether he's going to tell the truth about that or stonewall it. And I would say that that's an important response in terms of determining his credibility on all the issues, particularly the major issue of what involvement, if any, did he have with Miss Levy.
Okay, let me take a quick break, ladies and gentlemen. A lot to talk about tonight. They captured that Soltys, the alleged creepy mass murderer, family annihilator. I want to talk about that. I want to give you that sneak preview of my special inside the dispatches from the drug war. Really some hot stuff there, and much more. Diana, tomorrow, the 4th anniversary of her tragic death. But the first half hour, Where is Chandra? Continues right after this short break. Please stay tuned.
Refinancing your mortgage may be easier than you think. Just log on to ditech.com or call 1-800-71-FIX. Today's low fixed rate with 0 points is only 6.875%. With interest rates lower, now may be a great time to get cash or use the equity in your home to consolidate bills. It's smart money from ditech.com. Apply online or call us at 1-800-71-FIX.
It's only a little scratch.
Here a scratch, there a scratch, everywhere a scratch. And they're all an eyesore. What you need is GS27 Scratch Remover. It gets rid of those surface scratches quickly and easily. Simply rub GS27 into the scratch, then polish to a beautiful finish. The scratch is gone. Would you do this to a brand new car? Ouch! But GS27 removes that ugly scratch quickly and easily. It'll even remove paint scrapes and unsightly rust. GS27 is only $9.95. But call right now and get a second tube for only $5. That's two for just $14.95. Plus, we'll give you this key finder key ring free. Just whistle and the key ring beeps. Order your GS27 now.
Call 1-800-590-6611 to order GS27 scratch remover now. Get one tube for $9.95 or double your order and receive two tubes for just $14.95. Call 1-800-590-6611.
Get ready to take down this phone number because now you can get a 120-day supply of Passion ZX for free. To introduce you to VitaFree.com, we're giving away a full 120-day supply of this incredible new all-natural herbal supplement for free. Anorex and Viramax sell for up to $200, but VitaFree.com is giving away a full 120-day supply of Passion ZX free. If you're one of the many Americans who wants to put romance back in your life, then you need Passion ZX. It's time to stop blaming yourself because now you can make that special relationship the most satisfying it can be.
I heard about this free offer for Passion ZX on the radio. I can't believe what it did for the romance in our relationship.
Passion ZX saved our marriage.
Don't pay up to $200 for Anorex or Viramax. Call the 800 number on your screen and get a 120-day supply of Passion ZX free. Or log on to VitaFree.com. That's right, call right now or log on and get your free 120-day supply of Passion ZX shipped confidentially to you today.
CNBC congratulates National Geographic Explorer for their 9 Emmy nominations. Explore every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday only on CNBC.
We're just trying to find a missing person, and right now I don't think the congressman or his attorney is in any position to be too critical of anybody. I think we all need to work together to try to find this young woman. I've not asked to do one interview. I don't recall calling any of you folks to show up here this morning. So I'm just trying to be responsive to media requests, be as honest as I can in my answers around what we know in this investigation. Obviously, I can't tell you everything because we do have an investigation taking place.
You think she's alive, Joe?
You know, the longer this goes, this search and unsuccessful search for her, although I start hoping that maybe, you know, she's on some island laughing.
Because they haven't found the body.
This. Because they haven't found the body.
Yeah,
and
but a lot of those mafia bodies they didn't
Right,
find
but this isn't a mafia case.
years.
This isn't a mafia case, you know, and that's what you said, and I agree with that. Sometimes you never find the body, and those cement blocks on the Giant Stadium are very hard to dig up. But we don't have that here. We have a young girl who I don't think is in that same element there that employs cement blocks and, you know, that type of devices.
Joe Tacopina is one of New York's best criminal defense attorneys. He began his career as a prosecutor in Brooklyn. He's red hot these days. In Washington tonight, old pal of mine, that town's top investigator, Terry Lenzner, who first came to national attention as a counsel on the Senate Watergate Committee. Terry's founder and chairman of the investigative group International. Also in D.C., the always outspoken Julian Epstein, the former chief minority counsel on the House Judiciary Committee. And in Los Angeles, we welcome back Candace DeLong, the retired FBI veteran whose book, Special Agent, My Life on the Front Lines as a Woman in the FBI, is now in the top 100 on Amazon.com. Julian, were you him, would you resign? Do you think he's going to resign? What do you think's going on in his head?
Well, if I were him, I would have done a lot of things differently. I would have tried to initially be a whole hell of a lot more cooperative with the police. Secondly, on Connie Chung, it was it was just a disaster. I mean, he should have said he had had an inappropriate relationship, that he failed to be forthcoming, that he did it because he panicked, but now he was going to try to do everything he could, including meet with the family investigators and do all the other things that the family was requesting and that the police were requesting, and he really blew it. So I certainly would have done that. I think the fact that he didn't do that, he's really laid his own bed at this point. I think at this point it's very, very unlikely that he will run again, and I think what's going on right now on Capitol Hill is much akin, you know, to what happened to Julius Caesar in whatever it was, 44 BC, when I think the party elders are really getting together and saying that this guy's conduct, his initial failings,
Who's going to be the Brutus?
I think it may be collective in this case. I don't know who will be, and I don't think it'll be a stabbing on the floor, but I think it'll certainly be an expression that the failure to really own up to the mistakes and to try to take some responsibility and try to make things better, the failure to recognize that and do that, it was just damning on his part. So whether it's a resignation or not running again or redistricting, I think that unless Gary Condit does something dramatic, he's history.
The AP, Julian's just running, I'll read you the first line. Democrats in the state Senate plan to unveil as early as Friday, tomorrow, a congressional redistricting map that would help Democrats retain the district now held by the embattled Representative Gary Condit. A key senator said Thursday they want to move it north to include, as Nora O'Donnell said, to include parts of Stockton, a heavily Democratic city with lots of minorities.
Yeah.
It's the kiss of death. That might convince him to hang around or hang in or try and win a Democratic primary. He has 27% of the total vote. He could win a primary and, you know, in a...
I don't think so. The way I looked at the map that they were talking about today, I don't think he could even win a primary, because if you look at his voting record, he's got a very, very conservative voting record. He's one of the few that voted for the president's tax reform. He's voted for Republican proposals quite frequently, and I think that if you begin to move that district to a more liberal constituency, I think it's very unlikely he could even survive a primary.
Candace, would you, if you, I hate to say this, if you, were you in a jam, would you have your kids go out there in front for you?
No, of course not. I was quite shocked at that. And one of the things that that occurred to me as I was watching Chad talk was he seemed very, very sincere. I have a son. I was touched. I don't think some of the things he said were possibly the wisest things that should have been said, but no, I can't even imagine sending my son out to speak for me.
Okay, let me take a quick break on that note. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Want to rearrange the living room? Dust behind that chest? How about move that king-size bed? Better get some moving men. No, not those moving men. These moving men. Introducing the moving men. The furniture sliders that make moving even the largest furniture child's play. Just slip a moving man under each leg, and even the heaviest piece slides along effortlessly. Each moving man is made of a highly polished polymer and fitted with a special grip pad for the legs to rest on. Even this loaded bookcase practically floats along. These men can hardly budge this armoire, yet this 90-pound woman can slide it clear across the room. We placed this wooden freight skid on 4 moving men with these heavy cinder blocks. It slides along like magic. This couple rearranged their living room in just a few minutes. They even used it to move that big screen TV. And now you don't have to bother your friends just to clean behind the bed. Sliding furniture without the moving men can bunch up and even damage expensive carpeting. The moving men are guaranteed. If they're not the best helpers you've ever had, send them back for a full refund. You get a set of 4 moving men for just $19.99. And if you call right now, we'll double your order. That's 8 moving men for less than $10 a set. But that's not all. We'll also include 8 mini movers. Put them under the washer and dryer, or anything you frequently move for cleaning. Watch, here's one more incredible demo. It could take you hours to move your entertainment system. But why take it apart when you can move it all at once? Order now and get it all. That's 8 jumbo moving men and the 8 mini movers for just $19.99. So stop straining your back and let the moving men professionally move that heavy furniture. Call now.
To order the amazing moving men for only $19.99 plus shipping, have your credit card ready and call 1-800-682-1313 or send check or money order to the address on the screen. That's 1-800-682-1313. Call now.
CNBC Creating Wealth, the new CNBC book smart investors need now to navigate the market. From financial expert Brian O'Connell and CNBC's own Bill Griffith. Invest smart, even in a volatile market. Make CNBC Creating Wealth a part of your investment strategy. Available at CNBC.com and in bookstores nationwide. Profit from it.
You know, I was just talking to the commercial break. This has nothing to do with anything. But did you hear about what happened in Seattle, that woman who was on the bridge? And she was threatening to jump, and she wouldn't make up her mind. She wouldn't jump, so the crowd, because the traffic really backed up, the cops obviously had to stop the traffic. The people driving their cars started shouting to the woman to jump, 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 because they were getting so frustrated in this traffic jam. Finally, she jumped. I mean, Candace, I mean, well, don't talk about it. We're not, that's not our topic, but I think Seattle has to take another look at what's going on. Maybe it's not so hip and
I think there's a special place in hell for those people. I cannot even imagine what, just because you're late for work, my gosh, sit back and turn on the radio.
When I saw the picture of her jumping, I just said to myself, what must those people be thinking right now? Anyway, talking about special places in hell, Condit showed absolutely zero remorse or contrition in his various interviews, as I could see. There was one tiny moment in the local TV interview where he seemed to finally be a man. To get a, you know, it lasted a very, 5 seconds. But why do you think it is, most politicians you would think could act contrite or remorseful?
You'd think. I must have missed that little moment of
it was brief.
specialness that you were talking about. All I could think of, Friday after ingesting the interview was this man's arrogance is only surpassed by his stupidity. It's probably no secret to any of your viewers kind of where I stand on the Condit issue, but I have to tell you, as a result of his evasiveness, his deflecting from questions, his demeanor, very guarded, my level of suspicion regarding his possible involvement in Chandra's disappearance went way, way up.
Well, I hate to say I agree with you.
Yeah, well, I don't.
Why?
Well,
I have a constitutional right to be suspicious.
Yeah, you do, but you also have to inject a little logic and common sense into it. I don't think his actions there. I knew that was going to happen, by the way. I said when he decided to sign on for a national interview, anything short of, okay, she's in the third bunker behind, anything short of that was going to be a disaster, Geraldo. Okay. We knew that wasn't coming, and I don't think this equates to now he's a murder suspect.
I interviewed Wayne Williams, Terry Lanza. You did, you were on the task force, weren't you?
I was a special counsel to the Missing and Murdered Children Task Force.
In Atlanta, Georgia. We're going back into the 70s, or 80s, right?
Right.
Yeah. Early 80s. How'd you break that case?
Well, that case was broken by perseverance by the police and the task force.
Because you had similar pressure to what Ramsey's undergoing right now.
Right, and in fact, we had leaks about bodies showing up with carpet fibers and dog hair, and we were running around getting the names and owners of all the dogs in Georgia and checking out carpet stores, when bodies then started showing up washed with no fibers and carpet hair, carpet extracts.
Yeah, yep.
And so we had the police go out and start looking at rivers and lakes, and they happened to be at a river when they heard a body splash into the water and went up to the bridge and found Wayne Williams, and that was how that case got broken.
Well, maybe they need that same kind of perseverance. I'm not saying they're not showing it. Julian, finally, wouldn't you, if you were Abbe Lowell, quit at this point? Isn't he out of his league? A great, fine civil lawyer, but shouldn't this guy have somebody like a Mark Garrigo, somebody like a Joe Tacopina?
Oh, no, I think that's an unfair hit on Abbe. I think Abbe, as you know, I worked with him very closely during the impeachment process. He's a sophisticated lawyer. He's very sophisticated in terms of the media.
But that wasn't very sophisticated advice he gave.
I myself, I probably would have pulled the interview if I knew that was what the answer was going to be. But I don't think Gary Condit is listening to Abbe Lowell at this point. I think he's taking his own counsel. I think he's in a very isolated place. I think he's very despondent. I think he feels very, very defeated. But the notion that I still don't think, even though I think that it did raise a lot of suspicions, the way he answered questions, there still isn't evidence. And if this guy can't dispose of a watch box inside of a French fry container in a Virginia gas station, a Virginia trash can, I doubt he can dispose of a body.
Thanks, Julian. Stay tuned, everybody. The show marches on.
Tomorrow, on a busy holiday weekend, they're the last line between life and death. But now they need help. Can the Coast Guard overcome its biggest challenge? NBC Nightly News tomorrow.
Ask your doctor about Celebrex.
Say you're in New Jersey and you want to be in Maui, hypothetically. On travel website A, you'd find about 16 flight options. Website B, around 9. But on Orbit, the travel website from the airlines, you'd find over 100. That's the most you can get. So in Maui, you can relax knowing you got the most low fares. That'd be a pretty good feeling, don't you think? Visit Planet Earth via Orbitz.com from the world's leading airlines.
We've got this e-business thing nailed. We know exactly what our customers want.
And we streamlined our supply chain so we could get it to them fast.
We're in Belgium.
Our overseas operation.
How do you do it?
Follow me.
Now don't freak out.
Please, no pictures.
You can do anything with the Black Rocket, the e-business network platform from Genuity.
your doctor about Celebrex.
What is it? It's the best of classic AWA wrestling here on Direct Ticket Pay-Per-View on Direct TV.
I hope you are hearing this.
It's the best of classic interviews of the AWA.
I've waited a long time for something like this.
Relive the events and times of the American Wrestling Association.
I'm gonna tell you something else. I got a big fat wife and 9 kids at home, and I gotta feed them. Roll out the barrel.
Holy smokes, look at this.
I'm gonna wait. Could be electrified funk.
A man of my very own.
Jennifer Lopez has a problem.
He turned out to be the groom of one of the weddings I was planning.
That is pathetic. How do you find true love?
It's really a funny story.
Matthew McConaughey.
I know the curves of your face.
Is this a trick?
Jennifer Lopez is the wedding planner. Order it on pay-per-view in the domestic bliss of your own home.
Love isn't a fairy tale.
This month on Blockbuster Ticket, only on DirecTV.
He's a baby-killing punk who didn't even have the brains or guts to run much further than some nearby woods and then his own mommy's backyard. So it was a low-key arrest today after a very high-profile 10-day nationwide manhunt. Nikolay Soltys, the Ukrainian immigrant who is suspected in the slashing murders of his pregnant wife, his 3-year-old son, his aunt, his uncle, 2 9-year-old cousins, was finally apprehended this morning, shortly after showing up barefoot, dirty, and unshaven in his mom's backyard. NBC's George Lewis reports.
A special task force hauled Soltys into custody early this morning after his very own brother called 911 and tipped authorities. Officers found Soltys hiding in his mother's backyard under a desk next to an old refrigerator.
As he heard us, he sprang to his feet and appeared as if he was going to run, but the inoperable refrigerator's door was open, blocking his exit.
Police had been searching for Soltys for 10 days, saying he murdered his pregnant wife, his 3-year-old son, and 4 other family members. They believe he may have been camping out in a wooded area near his mother's house and slipped into the backyard overnight, although the house was under 24-hour surveillance. Police were also keeping an eye on a dozen family members. Officers say when the family spotted Soltys this morning, the brother ordered everyone out of the house.
Grabbed the family and took off. He expressed to me that the whole family was extremely afraid of him.
He drove to a neighborhood store and tried to call 911, but was so panicked he kept dialing 119. Finally, a store employee saw he was having trouble.
I approached him and he had his phone in his hand, his cell phone, and he was shaking. He says, he couldn't dial 911 because it looks like he was trying to dial 911.
With her help, the brother got the police on the phone, and then they got Nikolay Soltys.
It doesn't matter who caught him. The bottom line is he's in custody, and nobody else that at this time that appears was injured or hurt in this process.
George Lewis joins us live right now from Sacramento. George, first of all, how did he get into that backyard? I would imagine they had it staked out pretty well.
Well, police are absolutely mystified, Geraldo. They had the house under 24-hour surveillance. They took this thing so seriously, they actually had 15 other family members under surveillance as well. And somehow, during the dark of night, wearing dark clothing, he may have slipped into that backyard from a wooded area behind. Police want to know how he got in there, given all that surveillance.
But I really, it's great, isn't it, George, to be able to praise law enforcement for a job well done. They got there in a hurry. Even if the guy's dialing 119 instead of 911, they got over there quickly enough, and they nabbed them, took them down, no shots fired.
Yeah, the police are very happy about that. This was a huge investigation. They had
how huge? How huge?
I'm sorry?
How big was it? How many people involved?
Well, literally hundreds of people. I asked a representative of the sheriff's department how many officers they had on the case, and they're not even sure, because they had local police, they had state police, they had the FBI and various other jurisdictions all together in this task force. Across the street from me at the sheriff's office, they had a headquarters man 24 hours a day with a couple of dozen people on the phones just tracing down leads. Now, just as you were starting your broadcast this evening, Geraldo, they transferred Soltys from here to the county jail. They've been interrogating him most of the day. It's been very slow going because he doesn't speak English.
Does he have a lawyer?
We're not sure whether he has a lawyer at this point. I suspect he does, because the prosecutor here has been very careful to follow the letter of the law. As soon as the prosecutor's office got involved here, the sheriffs clammed up about the details of what he's telling them.
I bet Sacramento's signing a big one tonight, huh?
Oh, they're very happy this is all over. One of the relatives of one of the victims said it's like a huge weight has been lifted off our shoulders. We feel we can go to our homes safely now.
Okay, thanks a lot. George Lewis, NBC's George Lewis in Sacramento. Thanks. Okay. You know, Candace, weren't you a psychiatric nurse?
Yes, I was for almost a decade.
Before you went into the FBI. Mm-hmm. You ever interview any of these family annihilator types?
Yes. As a matter of fact, one of my very first cases when I was in my early 20s and starting out in psychiatry was a man who had killed his wife and children, and they are called family annihilators. Sometimes they're motivated for various reasons. Oftentimes they are mentally ill, and sometimes they kill their families because they think the world's a terrible place and they're very depressed, and they're doing them a favor.
Well, we'll find out what his motive or his purported motive was. I'm not that interested. But, you know, the main question I ask, do they usually stay this close to home? I mean, are they such, you know, are they such sissies, really, that they don't even, after they killed their 3-year-olds by stabbing them in the back, don't they even have the enterprise to get out of Dodge?
Actually, most fugitives do, but family annihilators tend to be apprehended fairly quickly. And I think in this case, apprehended 10 days was pretty quick. Who knows what he was thinking, but who know, you know, what could have possibly been in his mind to do what he is alleged to have done in the first place. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Candace DeLong.
You're welcome.
Joe, would you, you have 5 kids now. I got 4.
Kids.
Would you represent this guy?
Not for all the money in the world, Geraldo. Primarily because I don't think I could fulfill my oath to him. You know, a lawyer, a criminal defense lawyer, has an obligation to represent someone vigorously within the canons of ethics, and I certainly would have absolutely no interest and no heart to represent someone like this. And you know, he isn't entitled to a lawyer. He's just not entitled to me.
Me either. Me either. Okay, so much. You know, Nikolay Soltys. You know but here's the question I want everyone watching to ask themselves now. Those of you who believe Andrea Yates should not receive the ultimate punishment for killing her, drowning her children, what do you think about Nikolay Soltys? I know there's a pathology involved with Andrea Yates, purportedly, allegedly. Well, and then there's a pathology involved with Nikolay Soltys. Are we going to treat these two family annihilator, mass murderers with some sense of equal justice? I don't know. I don't know. I just am intrigued by it. But anyway, we'll follow the story to the extent that it merits. Yeah, I bet that you remember where you were when you heard the awful news. And I bet that you remember where you were when they buried Princess Diana. Tomorrow marks a melancholy 4th anniversary for the British people and for millions of others of us who love the princess with the radiant smile and the world-class heart. 4 years since her violent death in the Paris car crash heard round the world. Today, the still grieving father of Dodi Fayed, the boyfriend killed along with Diana and 2 others, continues to insist it was murder. Mohammed al-Fayed has always believed there was a wide-ranging conspiracy to assassinate his playboy son and England's noble, beautiful, but troubled Princess Di. Today, he held a news conference to once again voice his suspicions. NBC's Brooke Hart reports.
The day before the 4th anniversary of that deadly car crash in a Paris tunnel, killing Princess Diana, her boyfriend Dodi al-Fayed, and their driver, Henri Paul, al-Fayed's father, through his Washington lawyer, renews his claim it was no accident.
I'm in no doubt that the death was the result of a murder with racism at the core.
Al-Fayed and his team allege a broad conspiracy. From paparazzi, they say,
may in fact have been working for French or British intelligence services.
To medical examiners, investigators, and the French courts, who concluded
Henri Paul was drunk, the car was driving at high speeds, and that is what caused the accident. As I said, we dispute each and every one of those findings.
To French, British, and U.S. intelligence.
The key agencies, the CIA, the FBI, and the NSA, have purposefully, intentionally refrained from turning over documents and doing everything in their power to stall this case.
The purpose of the conspiracy, says al-Fayed's team,
this was part of a plot to ensure that the future King of England did not have a stepfather who was a Muslim.
But that future King of England, Prince William, his brother, their father, Diana's friends, those closest to her, have made no public statements suspecting foul play or suggesting anything other than a sad accident. The U.S. and British intelligence agencies have repeatedly rejected claims they were involved in the deaths, calling the allegations ludicrous. Brooke Hart, NBC News, Washington.
Thanks, Brooke. Okay, we're going to meet two of Muhammad al-Fayed's top people a bit later. But let me go through some of the critical items that they raised at today's press conference. Yep. Item, the al-Fayed camp alleges that the French judge in charge of the crash investigation shut it down without taking any action, repeatedly told the cops who were seeking instructions to do nothing. Second item, the question of whether Diana might have been pregnant at the time of her death was never fully resolved, as her body was partially embalmed before it left Paris, which could confuse the results. And a phone call was reportedly made to the doctors during the autopsy, directing the doctors to reveal nothing about any possible pregnancy. Third item, a former British intelligence operative who claims the deaths were not an accident is under attack by British authorities, and the U.S. government is helping Britain prepare indictments against this guy. Fourth item, forensic samples from the body of the drunk driver, Henri Paul, which the French promised to turn over to the al-Fayed investigators, were either lost or ruined. Okay, was it 6? One of the paparazzi who were following Diana the night allegedly, that night, you remember the paparazzi were at first thought responsible for causing the crash? Well, anyway, one of the key guys, one of the key paparazzi, allegedly sold his white Fiat Uno a month after the crash. That's the same kind of car, you'll recall, that supposedly sideswiped the death Mercedes. Then a photographer himself died in a mysterious car accident. Then it gets even more spooky because masked gunmen were later reported to have broken into the photographer's office after he died in this mystery accident and having removed various items. Al-Fayed's people say that they found the Fiat Uno, but were arrested for conducting an illegal private investigation. So if all of that is of concern to you, stand by. We have a couple of key operatives from Muhammad al-Fayed about to join us right after this brief commercial message. Stay tuned.
Tim Russert. Intimate conversation with today's most interesting personalities and newsmakers. This weekend.
If I didn't wake up,
I'll still be sleeping.
He's left his mark in American baseball forever.
A gifted athlete, a witty philosopher, an American legend.
Yogi Berra. Tim Russert. This weekend at 10 p.m. Eastern on CNBC.
Refinancing your mortgage may be easier than you think. Just log on to ditech.com or call 1-800-71-FIX. Today's low fixed rate with 0 points is only 6.875%. With interest rates lower, now may be a great time to get cash or use the equity in your home to consolidate bills. It's smart money from ditech.com. Apply online or call us at 1-800-71-FIX.
Lots of places offer upgrades. Usually you spend a little more, you get a little more. But in Gateway Country, it's different. You get a lot more. And right now, it's free. When you buy a Gateway Essential 950C featuring the Intel Celeron processor, you get an extra large monitor plus a CD burner. That's 2 big upgrades, all for just $7.99. Now, who could beat that? Who'd even try? Offer ends September 9th, so stop by or call today.
Good thing kids love Kraft singles, because 2 out of 3 don't get the recommended amount of calcium. And singles are a good source. There's something about Kraft cheese.
Heartburn caused by acid reflux. some prescription medicines promise you freedom from the pain.
But what kind of freedom is getting locked into taking a pill every day?
Ask your doctor. He may recommend you take Gaviscon whenever you need it. Gaviscon tablets are different. They become smooth and creamy on the way down, forming a soothing protective barrier that helps keep acid down.
Why get locked in to taking a pill every day when Gaviscon gives me relief?
Gaviscon, relief from acid reflux without a prescription.
Joining us now in Washington, Mark Zaid, an attorney specializing in international and national security matters. Mr. Zaid represents Muhammad Al-Fayed. A friend of ours, John McNamara, served in the Criminal Investigations Department of Scotland Yard for 26 years, now an advisor to Mr. Al-Fayed, head of security at his famed London store Harrods. I want to get to Christopher Anderson and Richard Meinhardt in just a bit. Let me go right to John McNamara. I've got your documents here, John. Let me read one. Indeed, the inconsistencies are such that we cannot at present be satisfied that the samples apparently tested are indeed those of Henri Paul. It sounds to me like you really are alleging nefarious conduct on the part of the French investigators.
Gerardo, good evening. There is absolutely no doubt about that. Throughout, the French have refused any independent analysis of Henri Paul's blood or body samples. And a promise was made by Judge Stephan, the investigating magistrate, that at the conclusion of his inquiry, those samples would be turned over to our people for independent analysis. An assurance was given by Judge Stephan that they would be properly stored. In other words, they would be frozen so they could be eventually examined. At the end of his inquiry, he then again refused to hand over any samples simply on the basis that we were going forward to an appeal. There has now been a statement from Dr. Pepin, their toxicologist, that unfortunately those samples were not stored properly and they are now useless. So we cannot get to the bottom of whether that was Henri Paul's blood or not. We have always insisted it was not his blood and he was not drunk. So we are now in a situation where we are left with possibly testing DNA samples, but again, the French are consistently refusing to hand those over to us. They will not allow us to have access to them. In fact, when Henri Paul's body was released for burial or cremation, and in fact he was cremated, it was only on the understanding that no tests whatsoever could be carried out on his body on behalf of his parents.
I've always thought, ladies and gentlemen, that there's more in this case than there is in the John Kennedy assassination in terms of dubious conclusions by the formal investigators. But Mark Zaid, as I go through your documents, I see the composition of the polymer constituting the vehicle's fender compatible with the transparent and black traces visible on the Mercedes. Are you alleging that the paparazzi guy really did own the white Fiat Uno? It really did exist and really did cause this crash?
Well, unfortunately, that's hard to tell at this point. What we do know, in fact, when this first became apparent, and it was our representatives that, in fact, found this white Fiat Uno of Mr. Anderson. And unfortunately, when the story hit the press, and it wasn't reported here in the U.S., it was reported in the United Kingdom, for example, the Sunday Times did a very good story on this, but indicated the paint did not match. Unfortunately, they looked at the repainting, the second paint job this car had had. If you look further in the document, when you look at the original paint, it said it was consistent. It matched the paint samples that were found embedded in the Mercedes. Even more so, if you understand the circumstances as to how this white Fiat Uno might have impacted upon the Mercedes, the investigators who examined this car determined that the rear lights, the brake lights of the white Fiat Uno were not the original, as if they had been impacted out in a crash.
The implication of everything is what, Mark?
Well, that Mr. Anderson might very well have been working with British security services, or French, but I would imagine British.
And in fact, the motive being what?
Well, the motive, as far as what Mr. Al-Fayed has said from day one, when you start piercing together the evidence, there was a concerted effort to keep Princess Diana apart from Dodi Al-Fayed, whether that was through splitting them up temporarily or, in fact, perhaps permanently.
You really believe that it is possible that the British government assassinated this lovely woman?
Well, look, if we go back through either our country's history or British history, it wasn't that long ago that events like this happened. Look, 30 years ago with President Kennedy, our government was plotting to assassinate Fidel Castro. That's not too long ago.
Okay, Mark Zaid, John McNamara, let me know if you have any more stuff down the pike. Let me go now to the, I don't know, lighter side. I tell you what, let me take a quick break. We'll remember the legend of Diana, and then I'm going to give you that peek into the Colombian jungle, one of the most dangerous places in the whole world, right after the short intermission. Please stay tuned.
Naturally, we do everything we can to protect what we have. But we also recognize the need for growth. And we know that with growth comes risk. What's important is finding the right balance.
Careful.
That's what we do best at Prudential Financial. You got it. We help you find the right balance in your financial life. Prudential Financial, growing and protecting your wealth.
Say you're in New Jersey and you want to be in Maui, hypothetically. On travel website A, you'd find about 16 flight options. Website B, around 9. But on Orbit, the travel website from the airlines, you'd find over 100. That's the most you can get. So in Maui, you can relax knowing you got the most low fares. That'd be a pretty good feeling, don't you think? Visit Planet Earth via Orbitz.com from the world's leading airlines.
It was 1969. Peace, love, and music were in the air. And these guys?
Anyone see my slide rule?
Were nowhere near it.
Give it a whirl.
They were busy developing what would become the internet. As the internet evolved, so have we. BBN became GTE Internetworking. And today, we're Genuity, providing e-business solutions from the people who started it all. Genuity.
What is this? It's the best of classic AWA wrestling here on Direct Ticket Pay-Per-View on Direct TV. I hope you are hearing this. It's the best of classic interviews of the AWA. I've waited a long time for something like this. Relive the events and times of the American Wrestling Association. I'm gonna tell you something else. I got a big fat wife and 9 kids at home, and I gotta feed them. Roll out the barrel. Holy smokes, look at this. I'm gonna wait. Could be electrified funk.
A man of my very own.
Jennifer Lopez has a problem.
He turned out to be the groom of one of the weddings I was planning.
That is pathetic.
How do you find true love?
It's really a funny story.
Matthew McConaughey.
I know the curves of your face.
Is this a trick?
Jennifer Lopez is The Wedding Planner. Order it on pay-per-view in the domestic bliss of your own home.
Love isn't a fairy tale.
This month on Blockbuster Ticket, only on DirecTV.
Nobody takes you inside the markets like Maria Bartiromo.
How safe is your global portfolio? The CEO of electronics and engineering giant Siemens gives his take on Europe's economic slowdown. Plus, can this marketing genius work his magic for Palm?
Market Week with Maria Bartiromo, Friday.
Let me go to two other old friends of the program. First, Christopher Anderson, the author of The Day Diana Died, and his latest book, Diana's Boys, William and Harry and the Mother They Loved. He's written about 20 other critically acclaimed books. Richard Meinhardt's our other old pal, former correspondent for the London Daily Express, now a royals and celebrity correspondent for Star Magazine, one of our favorite tabs. Okay, first, Richard, you. Does the legend of Diana live on, or is it now all about the kids? Is it all about... Prince Charles, whether he's going to ascend to the throne, all that?
Well, it's a mix of all those because, of course, the legend of Diana lives on in the children, Princes William and Harry, and we've got two well-brought-up, well-balanced children, despite this tragedy 4 years ago, who are going to be the saving grace for the monarchy of England in about 40 years' time. Of course, William is much loved by the avowed monarchists as a future king in waiting, and, of course, by the younger people in England who just love him for his good looks and his typical teenage abilities. And, of course, Harry also, who will be 17 next month. And I think given that, of course, it means that we're going to have a very stabilized monarchy for the future. And this is all thanks to Diana, because she's brought them up to be normal kids. Obviously, they're going to be royal and one's going to be a king, but they're much beloved by the populace at large.
Is it true that Queen Elizabeth gave Prince Charles permission to marry Camilla?
Well, the palace is denying it, but obviously that has to be discussed. And, of course, in the 4 years since Diana died, public opinion has come full circle. And a recent opinion poll indicated that nearly 50% of the British populace who support the royal family did approve of Charles marrying Camilla in the future. But as to whether they would approve of her becoming Queen Camilla is another matter. But we'll have to wait and see, as is Charles.
Christopher, how much of our affection for William and Harry comes from the fact that William looks like his mother?
A tremendous amount. I mean, we have...
Great.
Chris, that's Chris, Rich.
Okay, hi.
Christopher, go ahead.
Yeah, Geraldo, I think a tremendous amount. We have to be honest about this. It's a little bit like the JFK Jr. situation. You know, if he didn't look the way he looks, I don't think we'd be as interested. I mean, he is eerily like his mother.
If he had those big ears of Charles and the
wouldn't be the same, would it? No, I don't think. I mean, he's got a star quality. He really does, and I think he is reminiscent of his mother in many ways. He has, you know, she thought of him as the male version of herself. One of her friends told me, and I think we're seeing that. We're seeing a kind of introspection that he has, and I think if he does ascend to the throne 40 years hence, as Richard said, it would be a sort of a hands-on monarch, the kind that we haven't seen in a long time. Somebody who's really trying to connect with his subjects the way Diana did.
Christopher, I just have a minute left, but it seems to me that Diana was the best thing to happen to royalty. Generally.
Absolutely. I mean, in life, she refocused our interest, I mean, the world's interest in the monarchy, and even more so in death. I mean, this kind of tragedy really, I mean, when you have 1.8 billion people watching a funeral on television, it says something about the way the world viewed her.
Richard Meinhardt, Christopher Anderson, thank you guys very much. And I'm sure we'll do the 5th anniversary and the 10th anniversary if we're still around, the 15th. Let me take a moment now to tell you about my new Dateline NBC report, which airs tomorrow night at 9. It's called Blown Away Inside the Drug War. I think you'll find it a compelling look at all sides of a bitter and bloody conflict. Despite almost 3 decades of American aid, totaling hundreds of millions of your tax dollars, Colombia remains the world's leading supplier of cocaine and the principal source of the heroin being sold right here on our streets. In the country itself, it's crime, it's chaos. Most North American companies have split. Forget about tourism. The economic loss is feeding that country's downward spiral. We're giving them $1.3 billion under a so-called Plan Colombia, your money. Their terror attacks, I've seen it. Take a look. The early morning calm in Bogota shattered by a car bomb explosion. Actually, there were several. As far as we can determine right now, 4 people are dead. Right at that bridge you see down this boulevard. They fear unexploded ordnance still in the area. Right now they're still in the process of removing bodies and other carnage. Shattered glass in a nearby apartment building. Look at this. All the windows on this side of the building shattered. Hi. Míralo, míralo, míralo. Hola. The children huddled between 2 walls. Okay, ¿qué pasa? Explica. This 11-year-old explaining to me that they're just minding their own business here in the neighborhood. The bombs exploded. They were terrorized. All the windows shattered. Now they're huddled between these 2 thick walls, hoping that if there's a further explosion, they'll be protected. Why here? Why here?
Because these neighborhoods are crowded of military families.
Military families?
Yeah.
But
I never expected to see my country in this state. Never. Never. Why? Why?
And your family, do you know whether they're safe or not?
My family? No, I'm looking for my aunt.
A bloody mess in Bogota. Anyway, tomorrow, a whole report, Dateline NBC, Friday night, 9 o'clock Eastern time. I hope you watch it. It's really one of my best. Next on the news with Brian Williams, the issues that await President Bush now that he's come home from Texas. Thank you very much for watching.